The sleek Los Angeles studio of Conversations That Matter hummed with anticipation. Stage lights cast a warm glow over the minimalist set. Two cream leather chairs positioned at a perfect angle. A glass coffee table between them, holding nothing but water glasses and subtle branding. Behind the cameras, the controlled chaos of live television unfolded. Hugh Jackman stood center stage, adjusting his navy blazer as he ran through his opening lines one final time. His voice carried that familiar warmth that had made him America's most trusted entertainment journalist. "Tonight's guest needs no introduction, but deserves our respect," he murmured to himself, the words flowing like a practiced prayer. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. 20 feet away, executive producer Eva Chen whispered urgently into her headset. "Load version C into the teleprompter," she said, glancing around to ensure no one overheard. Her fingers drummed against her tablet, the same nervous energy that had built her reputation for must-see television. The questions in version C were sharper, more probing. Hugh didn't need to know, not yet. Floor director Aidan Cole checked camera positions with military precision, but something nagged at him. He watched Meghan's assistant tense as the sound engineer adjusted the wireless mic pack. The assistant's hand hovered protectively near Meghan's shoulder, a gesture Aidan recognized from years of working with nervous celebrities. Meghan Markle sat in the green room, reviewing her prepared notes. Her cream-colored power suit was immaculate, her hair swept into an elegant bun that suggested control and grace. She traced her finger along the talking points. Children's book, philanthropy, California life. Simple, safe, respectful. Everything she'd been promised. The studio filled with the low hum of an audience settling in. Phones were silenced, cameras calibrated, and coffee cups steamed behind the scenes. At precisely 7:58 p.m. Pacific, 2 minutes before airtime, Hugh walked over to greet his guest. "Meghan, you look radiant," he said with genuine warmth, extending both hands in a gesture of welcome. She smiled, polished, cautious, but real enough. "Thank you for having me, Hugh. It's been too long since we've done something like this." Neither of them knew the script had already been changed. The red light blinked on. Across the globe, millions tuned in to what promised to be television's most anticipated interview of the year. "Good evening, and welcome to Conversations That Matter," Hugh began. His voice carried the perfect blend of gravitas and warmth. "I'm Hugh Jackman, and tonight we're joined by someone who needs no introduction, actress, advocate, and author, Meghan Markle. Meghan, welcome." Polite applause filled the studio as Meghan settled into her chair, crossing one leg elegantly over the other. Her smile was camera-ready perfection. "Thank you for having me, Hugh. It's wonderful to be here." "Let's start with the obvious," Hugh said with a gentle laugh. "How's California life treating you? I have to say you're absolutely glowing." Meghan's laugh came easily, the first genuine moment of the evening. "It's sunny, it's peaceful, and most importantly, it's ours." The audience responded warmly, though the word ours seemed to carry extra weight in the studio air. "Speaking of yours, your latest children's book, The Adventures of Archie's Garden, has been climbing bestseller lists. Tell us about that project." Meghan straightened slightly, clearly more comfortable on this terrain. "It started as bedtime stories for my children. Archie and Lilibet are endlessly curious about the world around them, and I wanted to capture that wonder. The garden became this metaphor for growth, patience, and believing in things before you can see them." "That's beautiful," Hugh nodded, and for a moment the exchange felt exactly as both had hoped: respectful, engaging, authentic. "And speaking of the children, how are they adjusting to having a mom who writes books about them?" Oh, they're my toughest critics, Meghan laughed. Lilibet especially. She'll point to a page and say, Mama, that's not how butterflies really fly. The audience chuckled appreciatively. In living rooms across America, viewers relaxed into what seemed like it would be a feel-good segment. The conversation flowed like warm honey. References to California farmers markets, morning routines, and the simple joy of reading to children. But in the control room, Eva Chen watched the ratings tick upward and whispered into her headset, "Send him the transition question, now." Hugh glanced at his teleprompter and hesitated for just a fraction of a second. The question glowing back at him wasn't one he'd approved. Still, this was live television. He took a breath and trusted his producer. Meghan, I know our audience is curious. It's been several years now since you and Harry stepped back from royal duties. Looking back, can you share what ultimately made that decision feel necessary?
The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Meghan's smile didn't fade, but something crystallized behind her eyes. The change was subtle but unmistakable. Meghan's fingers found the water glass, though she didn't drink. Her posture remained perfect, but there was a new stillness about her, the kind that comes before storms. "Hugh," she said, her voice maintaining its warmth but gaining an edge, "we've been quite thorough on that subject. In multiple forums. Extensively." Her emphasis on extensively carried just enough weight to suggest this was dangerous ground. Hugh felt it too, the shift from conversation to interrogation. But Ava's voice crackled through his earpiece. "This is what they tuned in for. Push gently." "Of course," Hugh nodded, "and I respect that. But I think what fascinates people is the human element, the institution versus the individual. Was there a specific moment when you knew?" Meghan uncrossed her legs and leaned forward slightly. "Is this conversations that matter, Hugh, or are we doing The Crown all over again?" Her tone remained controlled, but anyone watching closely could see her jaw tighten. A murmur passed through the studio audience, barely audible but unmistakably present. This wasn't the warm reunion they'd been promised. Hugh's internal conflict played out in real time. He glanced at his notes, the ones he'd prepared, full of questions about philanthropy and creative projects. Then at the teleprompter, where Ava's version C glowed insistently. "I'm simply trying to understand the journey. Many people watched you embrace that life, then watched you step away. That kind of visibility comes with—" "Visibility is one thing," Meghan cut in, her voice sharp enough to slice through the studio's careful atmosphere. "But this feels like an interrogation dressed up as curiosity." The words hung in the air like smoke. In the control room, Eva Chen leaned forward, fascinated. This was exactly the kind of television that created cultural moments. Aidan Cole's hand moved instinctively toward the emergency cut switch, then stopped. Hugh was still in control. Barely. "That's not my intention," Hugh said carefully, but his hesitation was visible now. For the first time in his hosting career, he looked uncertain. Meghan studied his face for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice carried a wariness that seemed to age her in real time. "Maybe not your intention, Hugh, but it's the result. And frankly, if your producers wanted a history lesson about my marriage, they could have just streamed the Oprah interview." The audience was now completely silent. Even the camera operators had stopped their subtle movements. 20 million viewers held their breath as they watched two public figures circle each other like fighters in a ring neither had chosen to enter. Hugh looked down at his cards, then back at Meghan. The moment stretched until it became uncomfortable, then unbearable. Finally, he spoke. Let's talk about today, then. About now." But the damage was done. The trust was broken, and everyone in the studio, from the lighting technician to the woman in the front row recording everything on her phone, knew they were watching something unprecedented unfold. The polished interview was over. What came next would be raw, unscripted, and absolutely impossible to forget. Hugh tried to salvage the moment with his trademark diplomatic smile, but the studio air had turned electric. 20 million viewers sensed the shift. This wasn't entertainment anymore. This was a collision happening in real time. Meghan, you and Harry have built something beautiful together. How do you maintain that partnership under such intense public scrutiny? The question landed like a match on gasoline. Meghan's composure cracked completely. Are you serious right now? Her voice rose just enough to make the front row lean back. Would you ask Tom Hanks how he maintains his marriage? Would you ask George Clooney if Amal ever gets tired of his fame? Or is it just women, specifically women who've been through public divorces from institutions who owe the world a play-by-play of their relationships? She uncrossed her legs, planted both feet firmly on the ground. The gesture looked like a boxer finding her stance. In the control room, Ava Chen whispered urgently into her headset. Camera 3, tighten on her face. Camera 1, wide shot for context. This was television gold, and she knew it. Security Officer Marcus Doyle, positioned discreetly near the audience, took a subtle step forward, not threatening but present. His movement caught the light just enough for home viewers to notice. Suddenly, this felt less like an interview than a situation requiring management. Aidan Cole's hand hovered over the emergency cut switch. Every instinct screamed to end this before it spiraled further, but Hugh was still technically in control. Barely.
Meghan, Hugh said carefully, his voice strained but steady. I think there's been a misunderstanding. No misunderstanding, she cut him off. This is exactly what I expected, and exactly what I hoped we could avoid. Her eyes blazed. You wanted transparency? Here it is. Women like me don't get to control our narratives. We get to react to yours. The studio fell into the kind of silence that makes ears ring. Even the audience member in row 3 who'd been quietly unwrapping a mint had stopped mid-crinkle. We're going to take a quick break, Hugh announced, his professional training kicking in. The camera cut to commercial, but behind the scenes, the real drama was just beginning. Meghan remained seated, arms folded, jaw set. She wasn't leaving. Not yet. When the camera light blinked back on 3 minutes later, both host and guest had returned to their positions, but the energy in the room had shifted from tense to combustible. Hugh's makeup had been touched up, though nothing could mask the uncertainty in his eyes. Meghan sat perfectly still, a coiled spring waiting for the next provocation. Welcome back to Conversations That Matter, Hugh began, his voice steady but lacking its earlier warmth. We're here with Meghan Markle, and we've been having a very honest conversation about public life and privacy. Meghan's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. Honest, yes. Let's keep being honest. Hugh glanced at his teleprompter where Eva's questions glowed insistently. He hesitated for a fraction of a second, then committed to the precipice. Meghan, there's been considerable media attention around lifestyle choices, security costs, travel expenses, some recent designer acquisitions. How do you respond to criticism about those expenditures? The question hit like a slap. Meghan's head snapped up, her eyes blazing with something beyond anger, betrayal. Are we reading tabloids now, Hugh? Or is this still supposed to be journalism? A soft gasp rippled through the audience. This wasn't tension anymore. This was a public execution disguised as an interview. Meghan leaned forward, her entire body language shifting from defensive to offensive. You wanted transparency? Here it is. Because if we're going to play this game, I'd love to discuss Jeff Bezos's yacht collection or Elon Musk's space hobby. But I guess it's easier to critique a woman's wardrobe than a billionaire's war chest, isn't it? Hugh's carefully constructed composure began to crack. I'm not critiquing. Oh, please, Meghan's laugh was bitter, sharp. Let's not insult each other's intelligence. You're using the softest possible voice to ask the hardest possible questions, and I'm supposed to smile and be grateful for the platform. The audience sat frozen, unsure whether to applaud or flee. In the front row, college journalism student Layla Khan held her phone steady, capturing every electric second. This was history happening live. You wanted a spectacle, Meghan continued, her voice rising. Here's your spectacle.
a woman refusing to perform gratitude for her own public dissection. Hugh sat back, visibly shaken. For the first time in his hosting career, he looked like a man who'd bitten off more than he could chew. What happened next would be replayed on social media for months. Meghan stood up, not to leave, but to reclaim space. She smoothed her blazer, took a breath that seemed to draw power from somewhere deep, and looked directly into the camera. "I want to say something to everyone watching," she began, her voice clear and strong. "I don't owe anyone my trauma in exchange for airtime. I don't owe anyone a detailed explanation of my marriage, my spending, or my choices. And I certainly don't owe anyone gratitude for the privilege of defending myself on national television." Hugh started to interrupt, but Meghan held up a hand that commanded immediate silence. "For years, I've watched women get torn apart in interviews like this. We're asked to be vulnerable, then criticized for being emotional. We're asked to be strong, then called cold. We're asked to share our stories, then told we're playing victim when those stories include pain." In the audience, Layla Khan's fingers flew across her phone screen. The caption would read, "Meghan just broke the fourth wall of fame. Respect. #boundaries not drama." This interview was supposed to be about my work, my children's book, my philanthropy, my life now. Instead, you've spent 20 minutes trying to get me to relitigate the past for your ratings. Aidan Cole's hand moved toward the cut switch again, then stopped. This wasn't chaos anymore. This was Meghan taking control of the narrative in real time. "You don't own my story," she said, looking directly at Hugh now. "None of you do. Not the press, not the producers, not the audience who thinks their curiosity entitles them to my secrets." The studio was cathedral quiet. Even the camera operators had stopped moving.
Hugh found his voice, though it came out strained. "Meghan, if this space no longer feels respectful to you, you're absolutely free to..." "To what?" she challenged. "To leave? And prove your point? To storm off and give you the perfect soundbite for tomorrow's headlines?" She paused, considering. For a moment, it looked like she might do exactly that. Then she surprised everyone, including herself. "No, I think I'll stay and finish what we started, but we're doing it my way now." The power dynamic had completely flipped. Hugh Jackman, one of television's most respected hosts, sat speechless as his guest rewrote the rules of engagement in real time. 23 million viewers held their breath, wondering what could possibly happen next. Meghan settled back into her chair, but everything had changed. Gone was the polished guest who'd walked on set 40 minutes earlier. Her blazer was slightly wrinkled, her perfect bun had loosened, and her eyes held the fierce clarity of someone who'd stopped performing and started fighting. "So," she said, crossing her legs with deliberate slowness, "where were we?" "Oh yes, you were asking me about my spending habits." Hugh looked like a man who'd accidentally grabbed a live wire. The interview he'd planned was dead and buried. What sat before him now was something unprecedented, a guest who'd seized complete control of his own show. "Meghan," he began, carefully, "I think we've gotten off track, have we?" She tilted her head, studying him with the intensity of a scientist examining a specimen. In the control room, Eva Chen was frantically typing notes. This was television history unfolding. Messy, uncomfortable, absolutely riveting television history. "The questions were meant to give you a platform to address public misconceptions," Hugh said, but his voice lacked conviction. Meghan's laugh was sharp as broken glass. "A platform? Hugh, you turned me into content. There's a difference between giving someone a voice and putting them in a cage and calling it a stage." She leaned forward, her voice dropping to something almost intimate, but no less intense. "You know what the real tragedy is? I actually respected you.
I thought you were different from the others. I thought conversations that matter actually meant conversations that mattered. The accusation hit Hugh like a physical blow. For 20 years, he'd built his reputation on being the interviewer who treated people with dignity. Now, live on television, he was being called out for betraying those very principles. This was never supposed to be an ambush. Then what would you call it? She challenged. Because from where I'm sitting, this feels like performance journalism, all the appearance of depth with none of the actual respect. The studio audience sat transfixed, watching two public figures strip away all pretense in real time. The moment that would define both their careers came quietly, almost anticlimactically. Meghan looked at Hugh for a long moment, then at the cameras, then back at Hugh. Something shifted in her expression, not anger anymore, but something sadder and more final. "You know what, Hugh?" she said, her voice suddenly calm. "I came here tonight because I believed in what you said this show represented. Honest conversations, human connections, stories that matter." She reached for her water glass, took a small sip, then set it down with the careful precision of someone making a deliberate choice. "But this was never about my truth, was it? This was about your platform, your ratings, your ability to get the famous woman to crack on camera." Her words carried no heat now, just cold, clear certainty. Hugh opened his mouth to protest, but Meghan held up a hand. "I've spent years being told that my reactions are too much, that my boundaries are unreasonable, that my truth is somehow less valid than everyone else's curiosity." She stood up, her movements graceful despite the tension. "I'm done with that." The studio fell silent, except for the barely audible hum of cameras and lights. 25 million viewers watched as Meghan reached behind her neck and unclipped her wireless microphone. The small device came away with a soft click that somehow echoed in the vast space. She placed the mic on the glass coffee table between their chairs. The gentle clink of metal against glass was the loudest sound in the room. "This conversation is over," she said simply.
The story ended not with clarity or reconciliation, but with something more valuable: growth. Two public figures had collided in the spotlight and emerged changed, one having learned to listen, the other having found her voice. The conversation, as promised, continued to matter. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us. In the front row, Layla Khan's phone captured every second. Her finger hovered over the post button as Meghan turned toward the exit. The caption was already written: "When you realize you don't owe anyone your trauma for their entertainment. Hashtag boundaries, not drama. Hashtag Meghan Markle." Hugh Jackman sat frozen, watching his guest, his friend, walk away. For the first time in his broadcasting career, he had no words. Behind the cameras, Aidan Cole finally moved, his hand reaching for the fade to black button. The interview was over, but the real story was just beginning. The mic lay on the table like evidence at a crime scene, catching the studio lights as the screen went dark. Within minutes, the internet exploded. Layla Khan's video hit 1 million views before Meghan had even left the building. Boundaries, not drama began trending globally, joined by hashtag Meghan was right and hashtag conversations that matter, though that last hashtag carried a distinctly sarcastic edge. In the control room, chaos reigned. Eva Chen barked orders into her headset while simultaneously fielding calls from network executives. "Get me a statement ready," she demanded, something about technical difficulties and rescheduling. But it was too late for spin control. The moment had been captured from every angle: professional cameras, audience phones, even a few live streams from viewers recording their TVs. There was no containing this. Network PR executive Jason McIntyre burst through the studio doors 20 minutes after Meghan's exit. his usually perfect hair disheveled, his phone pressed to his ear. "Where's Hugh?" he demanded. "We need damage control now." Hugh hadn't moved from his chair. He stared at the abandoned microphone as if it held answers to questions he hadn't known to ask. When McIntyre approached, Hugh looked up with eyes that seemed older than they had an hour ago.
Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.